Alright guys, I hope you can hear me. There's a lot of noise in the shop today, but here's a common problem that we see. If you look, you get stuff like this. That is indicative of an oil leak, and that oil gets all over these engine components, and when you're mowing and the dust and the grass and everything cake onto it, it creates an issue where all of that stuff gets caked into the cooling fins on the head. So you got the head for the number 1 cylinder here, the head for the number 2 cylinder here. And those cooling fins are designed to keep the engine cool because it's an air-cooled engine, not water-cooled. So you have to keep those fins free of all of that junk that's in there, otherwise they get too hot. And the case with this one is there's all this stuff gunked up in here, and the cooling fins were plugged up, and it caused the head gasket on this number 1 cylinder to blow. When I get it further apart, I'll bring you guys back in and show you what I'm talking about as far as those cooling fins getting clogged up. Alright, so I've got the engine cover pulled off now, and I guess I should start out by saying that the customer's complaint for this was that he was losing power. It was bogging down. So once we saw the engine gunk, or that stuff gunked up all over the engine, we kind of speculated that it might have been a head gasket. But if you look, these are those cooling fins that I was talking about right here. So the cylinder, the piston runs in and out of that cylinder inside this, and these fins are designed to disperse heat away from the engine to keep the engine cool while it's running. So this is the top side for the number 1 cylinder, and you can see all that dirt and stuff. It should look like this, where it's just that shiny, let me get a light in here, where it's that almost aluminum shiny looking metal there, and you can see here where it's just all black and charred from where it got too hot. So once he said that there was a loss of power, we checked spark plugs. Spark plugs were fine. Everything was good. We do a compression test on this, and this cylinder had 60 psi of compression. This one had 120. So that tells us there's something going on with this cylinder here, and further investigation revealed that it's the head gasket's blown right on the bottom side. So let me get some more of this torn apart, and I'll show you guys what I'm talking about as far as all that stuff being caked in there. Okay, so a little bit further in, I've pulled the valve cover off, and I've got this heat shield out of the way. I've got the intake manifold pulled up so that we can get to these head bolts here to get this head off. But this is exactly the kind of stuff I'm talking about right here. Look at this. Look at all that junk in there, just caked in there, all on that head. That's dust and grass and everything else mixed with oil that has caked itself all on those cooling fins on that head, which means this thing does absolutely no cooling whatsoever while it's running, which is what caused the engine to get hot and the head gasket to blow. Okay, we've gotten to the point now where it's time for the head to come off. Everything's been unbolted. This linkage here for the throttle and choke assembly, this heat shield has been pushed out of the way. So it's just these 4 bolts right here that need to come out to take the head out. So I figured I would bring you guys along so that you could see the same time I see what it looks like. Well, that head bolt wasn't even tight, so that's going to be a part of the problem. So let's pull the rest of these out and see. So there's the bottom side of the head. This is the combustion chamber. So you've got your intake valve here, your exhaust valve here, and then your spark plug comes through here. So these are the journals right here where your push rods come through to operate your rockers that push the valves up and down when they need to be. So Combustion chamber's got a little bit of carbon built up in it, but it's not terrible. So let me see if I can get this gasket off of here. Stand by, give me just a second. I'm going to get it off of here in one piece. Right there is where it's blown out. That's what was causing all of the loss of compression issue and it bogging down and not having any power. But they have revamped these head gaskets because this has been a common problem with these Kohler engines. So they've revamped the head gasket and made them beefier and stronger. So if you look, here's what the new one looks like. You see it's got a whole lot more material in it, and it's lined with the special material here to help keep it from blowing out again. So we'll get it all cleaned up and I'll show you guys what it looks like as we're going back together with it. All right, something I wanted to point out before I start putting all this back together is when you take this whole thing apart, you want to make sure that you get this mating surface as clean as you possibly can so that that gasket makes a decent seal. All right, so while I was cleaning all of this up, when we have it this far apart, we may as well go ahead and look at the cylinder walls to make sure there's not any scoring inside these cylinder walls, create a loss of power also. The cylinder walls look really good, they're smooth, there's no grooves in them. You can even still see a little bit of the cross hatching in there, which is really good. But what I did notice when I was starting to clean this head up, of course you can see all this stuff that's caked all over this head. It's just keeping it from getting cool. But if you look here, you see right where that head got hot. Because it's all discolored there, it's burnt. It's not going to hurt anything, but these are things that can go wrong when things aren't properly taken care of. So let me get everything cleaned up and I'll show you what it's supposed to look like before we get it put back together. Okay, so we've got the head back on, and now we're getting ready to put the bolts back in to torque. And you have to torque the head bolts down to a very specific torque setting, and there's a very specific sequence they want you to do it in. So the first one we're going to torque down is this one, then we're going to move to this one, then we're going to come to this one, and then we're going to go to this one. The first one requires, or the first round that you do, torque each one down to 200 inch-pounds. After we get him down to, each one of them down to 200 inch-pounds, then we're going to increase the torque setting to 370 inch-pounds, and that's going to be the final torque. So it's going to look something like this. Okay, there's that one. Just take it nice and easy. There's no reason to get into a hurry. Okay. Move this rocker out of the way. Okay. So now we'll increase this to 370 inch-pounds. All right, we'll go in that same order again. Okay, move down to this one here. Uh-oh. Got a little too ambitious for that one. Back it off just a little bit. Try it again. Alright, so we'll run through them one more time just to make sure. Alright, just like that. Alright guys, we got the whole thing put back together now. There's new sealing around the valve cover. We got a new head gasket on this head. The coil came off when I tore this side down. So the coil's been reinstalled. There's proper air gap between the contact points and the magnet on the flywheel. So everything is put back together. We just got to put the cover back on, bolt everything down. We're going to leave it set a little while to let the gasket set up around the valve cover gasket, or around the valve cover rather. This is a case in point in proper maintenance is what's going to stop a lot of these problems from becoming big problems. This could have been a very easily preventable problem, but it went too long and things started happening, and now you've got to start taking major engine components apart to get this thing fixed. So now that it's buttoned back up, I'm going to clean up all of this area back here to make sure it's good to go. And then just remember, if you guys start to notice a problem with your mower, if it's leaking oil somewhere or if something doesn't seem right, get it checked out, because it could be a simple fix now, but if you let it go too long, it becomes big problems down the road. If you have any questions, feel free to call the shop. Area code's 918-443-9393. Visit us on Facebook, MustangMowersLLC.com. If you like the video, be sure you like it, share it, consider subscribing to it. We'll keep bringing more content to you as things go along or as things show up in the shop that need to be fixed. Thanks, guys.